What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So that was ToyCon New Jersey. Cool 2-day event. Nice new venue. I'll tell you what, it was hot as shit in there. But it was nice. It was right in my backyard in Montclair. And I got to see a lot of my friends. You know, RG was there. Steph and Valverse was there. Leland Retrospect Customs. Tim, Toy Chase, and so many people I can name. I can keep naming them. But it's good to meet up with your friends and just check in on them, see how they're doing, and just, you know, see how life's going, because this is our little reality outside of life. This is our little escape, I should say, outside of life, and it's fun to just check in on your people and make sure everybody's good. But I had a great time. The past 2 days have been, spent a good amount of money, but can't take it with you, right? So let's get into my pickups. From my good friend JCR, Chris. If you're in the area or you do some of the monthly toy shows, you probably know JCR. Great guy, him and his wife, lovely wife. They're like lovely people, I should say. They know I've been trying to build out my nostalgia shelf, and they picked up a lot of pieces, and brought pieces, I should say, that are going to actually go right into my shelf. The first thing, unfortunately, it doesn't fit, but it's a cool piece. I'm going to keep it regardless. But they brought this just for me, and you know, I love my Animaniacs. So it's a bank, which is, you know, pretty cool. I don't even look at the year. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, 94. There you go. Had to have all three. And I know I have my Yakko in my booth right now, but being able to have all three, I could prop it up somewhere. So, cool piece. To go along with that, I pulled out a little bin, a little Stay Puft, and it lights up. And they threw in this little Zendaya figure. I'll probably just use the head sculpt off first. You know how I do. Kit bashing. I walked up by another friend of mine's booth. When I do my convention walks, I walk maybe 4 times. My first loop is honestly like saying hi to people / buy, because I want to get there. I want to see what's there. I want to pick up stuff, and then once I make my first lap, and I can kind of be like, all right, I picked up some stuff. I can sit down, I can talk to people in length and, you know, see what's going on. Then I'll go back for my second lap and recording lap, all that. So, a friend of mine, he had these grocery gang figures at his booth, and they were pretty cool. I had heard of them, I had never really seen them before. He had all 4 of them, and he had a mask figure, so I was looking at, like, all 5 of them, to be honest. And he said, yo, man, they'll be here, and y'all already know where I'm going with this. So, yo, man, they'll be here. Take your time, walk the convention. When you come back, they'll be ready for you. I was picking up at least one or two of them. I walked the whole convention. I come back, and there's a guy. He's making a deal with a guy. All 4 figures and the mask figure. So the guys strike. They make a deal and everything. And, you know, I should have jumped on it. And that's why I always buy like when I see things. So they make a deal. The guy's like, all right, cool. He turns around. He sees me. He's just like, damn, dude, I'm sorry. I say, yo, you know what? I should have jumped on it. So he had something else that I was interested in. I wanted to pick one up, and I've been meaning to for a while. So he was like, oh, I feel bad. He's like, yeah, I'll hit you with a discount. So I picked up Ripster Street Shark off of him. Obviously, this is like a new one. It's not the OG ones, but this will go in the shelf probably. And it was for under retail price on it. He was like, I feel bad, man. But I've been eyeing this for a while. He's had it for a while, and he dropped the price for me, so thank you for that. I feel like people knew that, one, I wanted to go to RetroCon for nostalgic figures and all that stuff that I missed out. But I also feel like people knew that I was building a nostalgia shelf, because there are some old school figures there, and I don't know. I'm becoming more of a retro vintage collector more than I see. Like, I went by one guy's table, and he ended up having these small Nickelodeon blind boxes. So I have 2 Hey Arnold, and I have 2 Rugrats of these. I picked those up from him, and then he had Ren and Stimpy 2-pack, Tommy and Angelica 2-pack, Arnold and Gerald 2-pack. So, and now my only issue, well, it's probably broke. My only issue now is I have to hope that I don't pull a Tommy from either of these. There's still a little there's Spike and Chucky. So I'll pop these open and we'll see what we get. Double Tommy. You know what? Only saving grace is I pulled a Helga. I got a Helga, so I guess we're doing a giveaway on the channel. Anybody want a Tommy or an Arnold? Hit me up. Now, the one thing I did also get from him, the person I actually got all these minifigs from, actually, y'all don't judge me, but I did this just for the figure. I'm just gonna take that. It's a card game. I'm gonna give it to my kids at school, at my job that I work at school. But if you guys didn't know that, I'm pretty sure I said it before. But I'm gonna take this and they can have the cards. Done. Okay. So the next booth, actually, I think they're actually next to them. They were right next to them. This messed me up too because I had looked for these figures and they were on eBay. I saw them a couple weeks ago, and again, nostalgia shelf. I'm like, cool, I want to find those, but they were on eBay for actually the same amount of price that I actually picked these up for. They are the 1993 Looney Tunes figures. So there's 5 in the set. I got 4 of them because the guy didn't have Wile E. Coyote, but Tasmanian Devil, Marvin the Martian, Bugs, of course, and Roadrunner. So across the way from getting hit up for my nostalgia shelf, it's going to be packed in a bit outside of those 2 Tommies that I have in the Arnold. Again, giveaway. 425 subscriber giveaway. So the guy across from them, actually, his booth was pretty packed. He had Transformers, he had Power Rangers, all that stuff. And I have been looking for the Mighty Morphin. I was trying to think of which ones. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Lightning Collection, because I want to build just the team and have Zordon and Agent 5, Alpha 5, and that's it. So the guy actually had most of them. I got Black Ranger already. He's back here. But pink, red, green, which I'm surprised by this one because I thought this would be... I see prices for this. Y'all know prices on this stuff. But picked up those. I have the Black Ranger, so now I just need the yellow and the blue. And that'll be it. That'll be a nice little display piece, but I wanted to pick up more than Mighty Morphin because that's really what I grew up with. There were ones like Turbo and stuff that came after. I watched this for a little bit, but Mighty Morphin was like my show. Those are my favorite Rangers. Zach was my favorite, one of my favorite Rangers, you know. So, Jason, Tommy, you know who we like. So, these were cool to get. I have to hunt down the blue. I will not be going to Amazon because I looked and it was like $100 on Amazon. So I was like, no, because I didn't even pay $100 for the 3 of these. So, long term, I'll find blue, I'll find yellow. And I have to get like a background or something like that and just prop them both. Like, I gotta take a picture or something like that. But, cool to grab these. Last couple things. So, I got hit up again because my boy Leland, or Retrospect Customs, and Kevin, NYC Figure Fanatic, they were right next to each other. Honestly, Retrospect was the first table I went to. As soon as I walked in, I saw him, caught up with him, picked up a couple things, and immediately was like, let's stash these for me for later, you know? He's like, I got you. So, Kevin, actually, NYC next to him, had a whole bunch of stuff. He's been blowing out figures like the past while now. Everything must go sales, $20 for this, $10 for this, and I wanted this when it first came out, but I wasn't paying that Super 7 price. I've been seeing it for a while, and I was like, when I get a really good price on it, I'm gonna pick it up. And he had it for $15, Super 7 Ultimate, and I love this episode. And it was kind of like a one-off kind of thing, but I love the episode, and I got Poochie. And I know the figure's like, alright, it's gonna go on the nostalgia shelf because it's Simpsons stuff. It was, again, cool. It's a cool figure, and I love the episode. Box is nice, but I don't keep boxes. Yeah, I probably hurt a lot of you guys' feelings just now. I don't keep boxes. Unless you're like, there's one I kept. But other than that, I don't keep boxes. So, that'll go. Now, Leland, retrospect, funnily enough, I got this before I went to the other guy and found the Lightning Collection. But it was like it was meant to be. I mean, it's like it was meant to be. Like, they were like, you're getting this today. So, Zordon, Alpha 5, picked this up. I got those to go over at the Rangers. And, I mean, I saw them on his table. So, I mean, had to. And, so, I mean, I had to. Like, I couldn't get that and leave this. And then I got the 3 later. Like, can't do that. So, there's that. Last pickup. I went back on Sunday. Because again, it's around my backyard. It's 5 minutes away. Went back. I had talked to the person. The guy was he had 2 tables kind of across from each other. One was more figures, stuff like that. The other one has some figures. They also have artwork. And you guys know I love artwork. You know, I love just putting up against on the walls. Y'all know me. So, picked up this piece. I was looking at it yesterday. I was hoping nobody bought it. He gave me a great deal on it, but I had really went over my budget and I was just like, I really want this. And I had some loose figures and stuff that I was like, hey, maybe you want to, trade or whatever. He's like, I don't really do loose. So I came back today and I had some mint and on card figures. And I brought them to him and he was like, I could trade that. I like mint on card. So I brought that and I threw him a little extra money and I picked up my boy Zoro from One Piece. I mean, and the eye and the hair glow in the dark. It's an original piece. It's a 1 of 1. If you want his IG, I'll put it up on the screen. It's authentic art. But it's spelled differently. I'll put it at the bottom. But use that or DM him. It's on the back, but it is a great piece. Like I said, I love original art. I love supporting local artists. So thanks for the great deal. I'll definitely be hitting you up for more. And that's all. That's it. That's the haul. That's it. I've spent way too much, and all my friends are already like, all right, Wayne Toy Show's next week, so we'll see you then, right? See you, Joe. And I'm just like, I just gave you all my money. They're like, nah, come on, bro. We'll be seeing you. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Special shout outs to again, everybody out there. I love that I was there, right in my backyard. I could probably come and go as I please, go home and everything. But I really want to say thank you to the people that came up and approached me at the convention these past 2 days. I had somebody walk up and say that, like, hey, like, I stumbled on your channel and you make some cool stuff, man. Like, it's awesome. So just want to say hi. And I met another gentleman on Sunday who, said the same thing. He looked at me, he was like, you look familiar. And, thanks, man. Every time that happens, I'm not used to stuff like that. So, like, when people are like, I know you, and I'm just like, you sure? Like, is that a good thing? Like, did I yell at one of your kids or something? Like, what did I do? Like, I don't know. So it's always appreciated. If I smile or I blush or whatever, like, I'm not used to that kind of thing. But I do sincerely appreciate it. I thank you for everybody that walked up and just said hi and I recognize you, or I saw your channel, man. You make some really cool stuff. I subscribed and keep going, man. Like, stuff like that is, awesome. It's the reason why I do it. I love just being a local guy, talking to the locals and meeting new people. So thank you. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. New stuff coming soon. We'll see what happens. I'll be at Legion, but that's still in November. We'll see what comes up next. I march to beat my own drum. Until then, have a good day and get out of here.